Thank you, Brian. That was wonderful. Going back to some of those shenanigans, by the way, there's a book out in the hallway. Where I documented a bunch of those shenanigans, so you can take a look at that. I don't remember how old I was, but there's quite a few more stories in the Prize Tulips, so the drag racing in there that you can find out about his youth. Thank you. Thank you for being here. It is so wonderful to see so many friends and family here to honor my dad today. Thank you, Pastor Dave and the New Alliance Church for having this here. Actually, I understand that this is the first funeral here, so that was always my dad, always pushing boundaries. So thank you so much, and it's wonderful to be celebrating him in the place where he worshiped. I really appreciate those who took time off work, away from their schedules. A lot of people drove far and wide. I see a lot of friends that he made in Columbus when he was down visiting Stephen and I here in this room, so thank you. And for those online, thank you for taking the time to be present with us. Dad was a father to many of us, and he was always giving and always present with us too. So I'll start with this statement that I recently heard, and it says that the secret to a good life is to die young, as late as you possibly can. Dad often spoke about how young he felt. Even when cancer had pushed him to use a cane, he was always talking about how his mind and his spirit felt young. And when we held vigil with him in his last days, he was still cracking jokes with Stephen and making plans with Jean and Brian and making kissing faces at Mom and talking stories with his sisters. And he was always telling me, we'll get through this. I love that. I said, we'll get through this. His blue eyes really did twinkle and dance with youth. He loved to surround himself with young and young-minded people. He was a grandfather to my 5 kids. He loved the activity that's going on up here in the front row. He and Mom always have been so hands-on with the kids, always giving bottles, giving pony rides, always engaged. And he was that way with us, as you heard from what Brian had said. Thank you, Mom, for giving us such a wonderful life. So when Mom and Dad were raising a young family, much like I am doing right now, Mom would need a break so she could make dinner. He would come home and she would hand us off to Dad, and he would wrestle with us or let us ride his back like a horse. He would show us things. He would constantly take us out to the wood shop or show us how to use pulleys. That was that part of working harder, not smarter. And as we got older, he was constantly teaching us and letting us try things ourselves. Right now, I know myself decently around a wood shop because he showed me how to use the machines. He didn't really teach me how to sand very well, though, because one year I made him a back scratcher out of wood, and the part you scratch your back with had just these huge splinters sticking out of it. But he kept it in his bedside table. I love that. He relished the role of father and father figure. We had so many events at the house with the church youth group, or he and Mom taught a young adults class that often gathered at our house. That role of father, teacher, builder, this is why he made 17 trips to Chile during his lifetime. And one trip in 2009, he spent 72 days there. He was building and fixing nearly a dozen buildings, orphanage dormitories, caretaker homes, and even the next door orphanage called the House of Hope, which was for adult orphans who had aged out. One of those young residents who went through both orphanages, she came to visit us. She stayed with us. Mom and Dad took her in. She was wonderful. She reached out recently to share stories about her American dad. Dad put a roof on a church in Africa over 30 years ago, and in the process, he made lifelong friends from Kenya who would visit us, would stay at our house. He always gave friends a place to stay or an ear to listen, and he and Mom welcomed so many people into our home. It's that true spirit of hospitality that Dad had. He was welcoming to people, rarely met a stranger. And that hopeful spirit extended to everyone, where some of us might, give up hope or be turned away by some people. Dad was always willing to see the better side of everyone, even like when we would say, I don't know, Dad, we knew better, but he was always willing to give people a second chance. And I love that about him. He told me in our last few days together that he always wanted to do what was right and right by people. And he did, and not just for his wife of 55 years after that infamous Christmas or us kids, but for so many. That spirit of doing right is actually one of our family's creeds, make it right. He taught me that mistakes, failures, sometimes just being a jerk is part of life, and what matters next is to make it right. Sometimes it would take him or us a little while to go do that, but we eventually did. Someone asked me what it was like talking to my dad, knowing he was dying and not long for the world. What did I say? What did he say? Well, I'll tell you. There was no undiscovered issue, no unresolved problem, no profound revelation about who we were to each other. We said the same words of love and admiration and thank yous that we have always said to each other. We talked about work and family. He shared his thoughts. We solved problems together. The mundaneness, if you will. And that has brought me so much peace. I still see his twinkling blue eyes, and I love that's my lasting memory of my dad. And boy, would his eyes light up when he could solve a problem or guide us to solve that problem. So currently I work for a cybersecurity company. I volunteer with this hacking conference in Columbus. And let me tell you, the real hacker in the family, it was my dad. He didn't have code, he didn't have a keyboard. Heck, most of the time he didn't even have the right parts or the right tools or even had even done what he was attempting to do. He had his head and a desire to solve those problems. He told me a story about his dad, the same one who taught him to work harder, not smarter. There was a bearing out in the tractor. Grandpa wanted him to fix it. It wasn't working. Dad had a bearing, he had a welding set, and he had the backing of his dad to go fix it, who said it can't be any more broke. He said he had never done this before. And so from this, he learned that even without the resources, the tools, the know-how, just trying something got you a lot further along than had you done nothing at all. My father-in-law used to say, "Imua kamehameha," always moving forward, which is also what my dad said. I love that. Many of you in this room understand that side of my dad. You witnessed one of his hacks, maybe been the recipient of one of them. He knew that plans needed to be flexible, and it's probably why he was that shoot the name type. When I was in high school, he helped me to convert a toy bow into a crossbow egg launcher for physics class. At Christmas, when he knew somebody really wanted something special, he would hack up a gag gift to give to them before Mom and he gave the real present. One year, Jean really wanted a hiker's backpack for our trek across Europe. So Dad found an old clothing washboard, like the one with the galvanized steel, there you rub it and it has two long holes on the end. We flipped it upside down, attached a little satchel at the bottom for her passport, put straps on it so she could wear it, and then at the top, between the two poles, strung some string, and so she could hang dry her undergarments while she hiked, because apparently that's all you needed on this trip. So Stephen also reminded me about another hack job that he did, the old riding lawnmower. This had a safety mechanism built into the weight of the seat. So if you fall off, the engine stops. No one gets hurt. It's a genius invention, but that didn't work so well when Dad wanted light little bodies to mow the grass. So he rigged it to circumvent the safety feature so that the machine wouldn't stall out every time we hit a bump and flew up off of that seat. So, sounds like my dad. And this past December, when he was having trouble getting around the house, he was still solving problems. There was a power outage and it was freezing and he didn't want Mom to get cold. So he bypassed the electrical unit to hook up the furnace to the generator, and his eyes were just twinkling with excitement about his ingenuity. And 2 years ago, he and I hacked up a solution to install glass panels and glass barn doors in my front hall, and it's magnificent to see. And it didn't follow any blueprints. Life doesn't follow blueprints, said the builder. He taught me so much. I am the woman that I am today because of him and my mother. He showed me that it's never too late to attempt something. Did you know that he joined the OSU Redcoats at the age of 78, the very same day he got the stage 4 cancer diagnosis? And he was so proud of that job, and he was a redcoat, not an usher, and he was sure to correct you. So Dad, he showed me a glimpse of God's love for us, the grace to forgive, to be forgiven, to receive love and hope. He taught me to go for it, whatever it is, because I'll be further along than if I did nothing. We will miss our dad, but his spirit and memory will live in our hearts. We will see his hack jobs around the house and around our electrical boxes. We will continue to make it right, and we will honor his legacy by being problem solvers and finding joy in life just as he did. Imua Kamehameha, always moving forward. Thank you. Daughter Sally would like to read something.
The Dash. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke the following date with tears, but he said that mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For the dash represents all the time that they spent alive on earth, and now only those who love them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel, and be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash?